Obsidian revealed the secret to bug-free games. A publisher is on the verge of death after missteps. GOG flex their pro-consumer muscles, and the industry has more leaks than a bucket made from an old sieve. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Roundup. There's a lot today, so strap in and be sure to smash that subscription button and check out the other 3 reports released yesterday. It is a damn busy time, we've got a lot to get into, so let's just do that. First up, we have Obsidian speaking up about publisher schedules. While it wasn't accusatory, they ended up sending a pretty clear message. So, their design director, Josh Sawyer, he was asked a question on his Tumblr. Someone wanted to know if their QA process had changed, as they had noticed that their later games, like Pillars of Eternity 2, were less buggy than some of their older games. He replied that he attributes the increase in quality to the fact that they were self-publishing with, say, Pillars of Eternity 2, and that means that they had complete control over the release date. He said that they prioritized bug fixes and performance improvements over releasing the game early, and that because of that they delayed the game a few months to make it a better product. Even though large-scale RPGs are basically full of bugs by default because of their complexity, they still, they can make it a better experience by spending more time fixing it up, but when a publisher holds the reins, they sometimes end up having to make a different decision. And honestly, this one is pretty subjective, I'll be real with you here, and it's a pretty hard call. A delayed game might be better, or probably will be better, than a rushed game, absolutely. But polish does, of course, cost money. A delayed game simply is a good bit more expensive. Every additional month can cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, on a large-scale project. So realistically, it's about working out where the line is. It's almost kind of getting a bit of actuarial science into it, and risk management and all that. Is it worth increasing the game's cost by 5 or 10% to make it 3 or 4% better? Maybe not. If it's 20% better, yeah, absolutely. So how do you measure game quality? How do you make that determination? Well, it's a very difficult decision to make. Sometimes continued iteration is just not worth the cost, but other times it makes all the difference and really does make or break a game. Of course, publishers these days end up sitting on the side of that line that we're not pretty happy with. Take Anthem as a great example of that. And developers having more freedom to release when they feel like they're ready, that would be a great improvement to the games that we get. So it's interesting, in both entities aiming for their own best outcome, there's a push and pull between lowering the cost and increasing quality, and the sooner the industry as a whole can find a happy medium, the better for everyone. Next, Josh gave another reason: quest design complexity, and this ties into Fallout New Vegas. He spoke about how they very much limited quest complexity at the start of Pillars of Eternity 2 development, and that really served them well in keeping the game bug-free. But he definitely said that there was a bit of a trade-off. Specifically, he mentioned Fallout New Vegas, saying that that game had some really cool quests because they did not limit themselves in their quest design complexity, but that it created a nightmare in trying to implement some of the quests and testing some of them because they ended up having to do, tricksy things to actually hook it all together in the back end. Now, this is the kind of lesson that a seasoned developer will learn. They'll learn their limits, they can work, within their limits and not let their ambition for a project destroy it. Now, that combination of a hard publisher deadline that we just talked about and the more complex quests, well, that ended up to New Vegas being, New Vegas. It was pretty buggy. Plus, of course, it was a creation engine game. And this did end really quite badly for Obsidian. They missed their performance-based bonus because the game got an 84 on Metacritic instead of an 85, which is what they had agreed to. And you could argue that this large loss in revenue for Obsidian was down to Bethesda forcing that release date, meaning less polish and a lower review score, which cost them their bonus, which is a pretty sad situation. What happens then when developers and publishers make the wrong decisions flat out? Well, we've got a pretty good example in the news cycle. Starbreeze, known for Payday 2, are in dire straits, announcing that they are laying off a quarter of their workforce, dropping about 60 jobs. They did offer a reason, saying that to be able to operate an efficient and profitable business long-term, Starbreeze has decided to implement organizational changes. That might sound familiar, right? While this is the reason that Activision Blizzard gave for their recent layoffs, the situation is far from it, as in this case it seems necessary for survival. In fact, earlier this month, they announced that they essentially would cease to exist if they did not acquire new funding, and that they had begun selling off assets like Druva, their Indian studio that Rockstar ended up snapping up. Now, on their end, they seem to have made a series of mistakes, including putting too many eggs in a single basket. Apparently, they relied primarily on Overkill's The Walking Dead, which honestly just boggles the mind. That game had a number of issues, to say the least, including changing engine mid-development and relying on crunch, resulting in delays and an underselling game that was pretty terrible and I believe ended up getting pulled from stores. So it is sad to see them struggling, and it's terrible for the employees, my heart goes out to them, but in this case it does seem to be squarely down to bad strategy and just mistakes. Next up, we've got some E3 speculation from Throt on Xbox. So, this article talks about everything that we can expect, including the potential for Xbox Scarlet updates. Now, first off, we were told not to expect any solid specs, but instead to get an idea of performance gains over the previous gen, with their lower-end model being 4 times as powerful as an Xbox One or Xbox One S, and the higher-end console being twice as powerful as an Xbox One X. They apparently talked about AMD's involvement, including the Zen 2 CPU, and a new Navi-based GPU. Beyond hardware though, they're going to be showing off 14 Xbox Game Studio games. There's one that's very big for me, of course, Halo Infinite. I cannot wait. Of course, then Age of Empires, which I guess I also can't wait for, and Fable 4, amongst others. Apparently, though, they're going to have a pretty large focus on Project xCloud, trying to, I assume, take the wind out of Stadia's sails. Alongside this, they're going to be talking about Xbox Game Pass on PC, and this is likely where it will get interesting. Xbox Game Pass on PC seems like it could be a different SKU, which is kind of interesting, and then it would also supposedly be included in Game Pass Ultimate, which would include both platforms. Now, while this is only a rumor based on some trademark filings in France, it could very well be the case, and that would prove something if it was the case, that Microsoft sort of see them as being different markets. Although that said, it's also true that Xbox Game Pass on Xbox and on PC would probably have slightly different lineups, so that could sort of justify what they're doing. But of course, being real, I would far rather it all be one subscription, but I mean, of course I would. That would be a better value. What is pretty clear though is it means that Microsoft see the Xbox console and the PC as being different markets. Instead of just wanting one subscription, everyone on their ecosystem, they are happy to go to the customer, so it's pretty interesting. And I guess just the new era of Microsoft is actually kind of promising. I just hope this all ends up being at a reasonable price, but we'll have to wait and see. Next on the list, though, we've got Last of Us and Uncharted multiplayer servers going down for good on the PS3. This is nothing new. We've lost many games' multiplayer versions to time, but reading the news, I thought of a sort of positive of streaming services, something that could be strangely helpful for game preservation. So in a console-less future, with Stadia or a competitor, multiplayer servers for old games could exist and just be booted up on the fly as needed. They'd simply be hosted in another server instance for players without any maintenance on the developer's end, as long as the contracts and legal framework allowed for it. Now, obviously, this isn't as good as the games being in the hands of users with privately hosted servers, like in the good old days, which I think is far better, but, at this rate, I suppose we have to take the wins where we can find them. Now, all that said, there's actually a larger game preservation story this week, and it's a follow-up on Telltale's games being delisted. So, as it turns out, Minecraft Story Mode is not just being removed from stores, it's also being removed from download servers. And this is actually pretty important, and it's all according to Mojang's, whatever they're called, their announcement. This is actually quite uncommon, and it's a stark reminder that we purchase a license to play a game. We don't own a copy of the game. That's just the way that it is these days. This seemingly is down to publisher contracts, where usually a storefront can uphold the purchaser's ability to play even after an item is removed from the store. So, if a game is delisted in Steam, as long as you own it, you can still re-download it. That's the norm. Now, we don't know the details here, but it's clear that this was not a part of the Minecraft Story Mode agreement, except on one store. GOG. They claim that they will still offer the game for download, of course for their existing purchasers, as per an official forum post. A member of their staff said, "In our publisher agreements, we make sure that delisted games remain available to users who bought them." And really, this is exactly the behavior that a consumer-focused platform would engage in. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that Steam haven't done the same, and I hope that GOG inspires them to go to bat for their customers a bit better, and overall, GOG just continue to prove to be a really, really good company, it seems. Okay, next we've got a rather silly Epic Games tidbit, one that kind of shows the type of problem that crops up when you just blanket apply something to your store and seemingly don't have great communications with your partners. So, Far Cry Primal, Ghost Recon Wildlands, and Watch Dogs 2 are all currently $5 on the US Epic Games Store. Of course, all as a part of the Epic Games Mega Sale event. Now, Ubisoft discounted the game down to $15, and that meant that it qualified for Epic's Mega Sale discount of $10, a really quite new thing where they actually discount the game $10 out of pocket, meaning that if you buy the game, Ubisoft still gets their full $15 and the $10 discount is just eaten by Epic into their costs. Now, if you're in the UK, those games cost £12.59. Not, £5. Why? Well, seemingly currency differences. The Epic Game Store Mega Sale discount of £10 applies to games that cost $13.99 or higher. So when Ubisoft applied their discount, it brought the game down to $12.59. Meaning that it fell shy of the Mega Sale discount threshold, so UK customers basically get a raw deal. Now, I can't recommend Primal, but from what I've heard, Wildlands actually has turned out pretty good with its content updates, and the Watch Dogs 2 is pretty decent too. This problem pretty much though is just a reflection of things being a bit fast and loose over at Epic. Given the number of publishers that pulled out because of miscommunications with the Epic Game Mega Sale, it just seems like they've not handled things well on the back end. As much as I still will say, it's a bloody good sale as far as sales go. It's pretty pro-customer and pro-developer. I mean, the funding situation is this is a store discounting the customer $10, but still giving that $10 to the developer, which is actually pretty impressive. Now, this could partially be Ubisoft's doing, as it is their game and they maybe set the pricing, but if so, I mean, it's still the same problem. Having a difference like this is not a good look for Epic, and it probably would not have been a problem if there was better management and better communication. And that really does seem to be the main thing. Epic are trying to do big things, but they're really not particularly great at PR and seemingly are pretty darn messy in the back end. Next, though, it's time to address the massive amount of E3 leaks. It's just insane. Basically, everyone has had some game announcements or details outright be leaked or just be shamelessly hinted at, and to my memory, this is the largest year for this type of thing yet. Perhaps it's due to just how many high-profile games are supposed to be talked about at E3, but it would be immensely frustrating to the developers involved, of course. In the West, we've got Darksiders Genesis, Watch Dogs Legion, Fable 4, along with some info on Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Orpheus, although one of the worst examples is Ninja Theory's Bleeding Edge having its trailer posted. Over in the East, Bandai Namco's website accidentally showed off a whole bunch of their surprises. First, the recently rumored FromSoft George R.R. Martin collab project. We've learned that it's apparently called Elden Ring, which I think is a perfectly cheesy name for a Western high fantasy via Japan game. In addition to that, there's a new Tales game that looks to be a serious departure from the series, at least visually, and then a Ni no Kuni remaster and a Switch port. That's all news that I think will make, I think that will make people really pretty excited. At least that one member of Bandai Namco staff is upset by this, with their original IP general manager responding to this in a very telling tweet. I can't physically read it because he just seems to have mashed his keyboard violently and hit send. Though I think we can all empathize with him, and really it's a reaction that hints at how much developers do rely on surprises to draw attention to their game and to excite fans. In all seriousness though, there's something we really need to talk about here, and Jason Schreier actually put this out pretty well in his tweets on the topic of leaks, saying that the idea that a game announcement being spoiled is a bad thing, that's a little bit unhealthy. E3 generates a ton of excitement every year, as does BlizzCon, Nintendo Directs, all that stuff. Basically, it's an instance of making a game announcement a cultural event. A massive amount of hype is created around games that sometimes are just barely prototyped concepts. We've been burnt by this in the past, we probably will be in the future, and we all have lists of large-scale announcements that have disappointed us. It's entirely fair to be excited for new games, of course, especially those from renowned developers, and it's also fine to be, excited in general for gaming as a hobby. I mean, what's the point of a hobby if you can't celebrate it with your peers? However, you can't forget, you're being sold a product. E3 is a supremely expensive endeavor, and the parties involved will want to recoup their costs. They might be a bit extravagant at E3 in order to, celebrate games with us, but they want that investment repaid. If they don't expect to be, why go to E3? After all, Sony are missing this year because they don't think it's worth their time and their money. Doesn't that tell us the whole story? And yes, this is a cynical outlook, but it's one that we should keep in mind. A very important skill is the ability to detach when necessary, or to perhaps compartmentalize. By all means, get as excited as you'd like about an announcement that sets your blood on fire. That's great. But I think we all still need to remember it's a company trying to make money by selling you a product. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but you just do need to keep it in mind when we have these marketing events that are treated as cultural events that are kind of replacing elements of community and stuff like that, humans kind of relied on for a very long time indeed. So there you go. That's it for the roundup. Keep an eye on this channel and get subscribed because we plan on doing a lot of coverage through E3. There'll likely be a hell of a lot, and who knows, maybe Randy Pitchford will open his mouth again and something crazy will happen. So anyway, this is the last video before E3 really kicks off. We are sort of postponing the deep dive episode from Monday to, be later. There's no point doing it on Monday. It's E3 coverage time. Patrons, I am working on a bunch of stuff for you guys. It's just been a pretty darn crowded month, and if you do have questions for the Patreon Q&A that's normally at the end of a roundup, I'm going to throw up another post over there to sort of collect more of those. So thank you very much for watching, and with that, I will see you next time.